Welcome back to another episode of Life with Lamb. Today I'm here with Jaxon. Jaxon is the founder of Chungus Coaching and a shareholder at Emerge Gym. I guess if I were to paint a picture of you, whenever you're training at the gym, I think the intensity just lifts and lifts and lifts and everyone just shuts up and puts in the work. That's probably the best way to describe you when I think of you. And I'm keen to unpack your story. Like, you've become such a inspiration and sort of a mentor for the people at not only Emerge Gym, but the people you coach. But yeah, I'm keen to unpack it for the listeners as well. Do you want to describe yourself in 30 seconds or so?
Yeah, thanks for having me again on the potty, Jaden. So, basically, my name is Jaxon Guerin. I am 24 years old. I am a competitive bodybuilder that lives in Melbourne, Australia. So, yeah, I have a online coaching service. I'm also a comp prep coach. Also as well, I coach Gen Pop athletes, so lifestyle, and also as well, I'm a shareholder in Emerge Gym. So I have some amazing opportunities in my life and also have some amazing people as well in my circle. And again, I'm just really grateful to be on the potty today. So I'm super excited to talk about some cool stuff and get into some really exciting dialogue. So
definitely really appreciate your time. Was it always bodybuilding for you? Like, can you describe your sort of early life and what that was all like?
Yeah, so starting up from my early life, like I've briefly talked about this, but not really much like in detail. Like, so basically a lot of the time, me being younger, I was very into like creative sort of studios and stuff where it'd be like filmmaking or dancing, which I sort of pursued later on, or just anything involving like using the creative side of my brain. So I was never really someone who was just like a normal kid. That's very broad, but sort of being more like specific with that is when I was younger, I really liked to, get involved with like creating things like Lego, making films, like playing video games, and sort of like wanting to do something in a creative side when I was older. Like I remember I wanted to be like a master Lego builder when I was younger. I'm like, oh, this is the dream. Like,
that's
this is
sick,
so good. Yeah. And like, I just loved like also history and stuff. Like I loved like listening, like watching like World War II documentaries and stuff. So yeah, I was a little bit nuanced with what I liked, and I wasn't really someone who, I don't know, I just never really like fit in. And again, that's so vague, but to go into more detail with that is like in primary school, like I never really had many friends. So I had like maybe 1-2 friends, and, I just loved like playing Bionicles and stuff, and like, Lego, and getting really creative with, my 2 other mates. And basically through that, it sort of led me into, just like making small films and stuff. And, all the time I would just love like making like military war movies and stuff. And I don't know if like that's something that most younger kids do, but yeah, I just love doing that. I just love creating like scenes. I was like, this is amazing. Like imagine like what directors and stuff, like their own Hollywood studios do with, $100 million budget or something. So yeah, and that sort of led me into, wanting to express myself and my emotions of being a kid that was sort of someone who didn't really have any friends, and like, just trying to find my way through life. So I was like, you know what, like I want to dance. Like I don't know why it made me so happy when I thought about it, but I remember I watched the movie Billy Elliot, and then I remember watching the actual stage production at Her Majesty's Theatre in like 2006, 2007. I was pretty young, and I just saw it. I'm like, that's the dream. Like I want to do that. I want to dance. Like it's just amazing to sort of see someone able to move like that, and also as well have the skill and the dedication, the athleticism to do that as well. So yeah, it was something I just loved doing, and I got into it, around the age of like 7-8 years old, until I fully got into a ballet school. And the funny part was like, with that was, I remember when like my first class, like I rocked up, I didn't know what to wear. So I wore just like t-shirt and like trackies as a kid. I'm like, I don't know what to do here. And funny was, I'm like, oh, so yeah, I'll be in the class with all the guys. I was in a whole class with all girls. So I was just
yes.
like, I'm the biggest like odd duckling here. Like I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just going to follow it. So I started sort of getting into it. I was a little bit embarrassed at first because, maybe like a while ago, just sort of towards that time, we were just getting out of that whole perception and persona of like, oh, if you dance, you're a girl. It's very girly. Like, you're like a pussy and stuff. Like, so things like that was, what really made me embarrassed about being able to like express myself as a person. And so through that, I just started to just dance more and more and more. And it became so exciting to the point where then we had our first like shows, and I was like an extra in this, you know, one of the oldest ballet series called Peter and the Wolf. So basically it's, you know, it's like an old Russian, I think it's like an old Russian type of show or something that, you know, like has been around for a long time. I think it's like nearly 100 years or something. But yeah, it was really exciting to sort of be involved in that for the first time. And, you know, I was this extra, and yeah, basically, you know, I did that for about 5-6 years until that sort of, yeah, just led into like more sport. But
so much to unpack there. Like very creative, aspirational young man going into sort of an industry that not many men sort of went into at that time. So it's interesting to listen to that. And I'm keen to unpack the sort of perceptions and how you broke sort of barriers with the stigma around it. But as a kid, you sounded very creative and switched on. And you mentioned the fact that you sort of had not many friends, which is fine. Like it happens. And
growing up.
Yeah, literally. And I think like it brings me to this thing that I've been sort of reflecting on with school and how coincidental it is with the types of people that you sort of end up with. So you're going into school with people who are the same age as you and happen to live in the same area. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be friends, but because of the schooling system you are. So how did you sort of navigate that? Like what were your thoughts like?
Honestly, it was pretty tricky because I remember in primary school as well, definitely, you know, just like with high school, it was a bit different though. Like mainly with primary school, there was just like this massive popular group, like all the athletic kids, and, you know, they all had their friends, and I was sort of like, you know, associated with those, you know, friends because, you know, my family, my parents knew their parents, and, you know, it's a small community, you know. So basically through that though, I was just very misunderstood. Like I was just really trying to fit in, and the way I went about it wasn't really the best. So I was just sort of trying to think, you know, I was trying to be that cool kid, and it never worked out because I wasn't being myself, you know. And I think a lot of the time, like when in societal norms, when we're trying to fit in amongst our peers, most of the time, if your aspiration is to fit in, you're never going to be yourself. You're always going to try and, you know, actually mask who you are as a person. And so, but leading into that time with the dancing as well, once, you know, a lot of people in my primary school found out, I just received so much criticism, like to the point where it actually made me stop doing it. And I just regret that. That's the one thing I regret to this day, you know, and it was something that I enjoyed doing because I just love to dance, you know. And I remember when I was there, at the time I was one of the youngest people in the ballet school for being male, you know, and there was about 2,000 girls that were there, and there was about 20 guys. So once I got introduced though to the men's class with one of the co-owners, so there's a couple, and I think it was Susan and Peter, their husband or something. Yeah, something like that. It was a long time ago, but I remember he was teaching us like different types of ballet, like contemporary, classical, character. It was like a Russian type of style of ballet. It was just amazing. You know, it was my place to go and escape from, and until I had to go back to school, and sort of pushing around that type of like societal norms in primary school. Where it's like, oh, if you don't play footy, or if you don't play cricket, if you don't play sport, like you're a loser, you know, like if you're not athletically gifted or gifted in some sort of like aspect where, you know, it's very popular amongst your peers, you're not really going to be anybody.
100%. It's like, oh, who can run 100 meters the fastest and those sorts of things. What were the conversations like with your parents? I know you were still very young when you're doing ballet, and would you come home and talk to them about sort of the criticisms that you were receiving?
No, that's the problem. I never really ever talked about when I would receive a lot of criticism from my peers. So like pretty much for me, I was someone who never really sort of knew how to express that. So again, I'd love to sort of express all my emotions through like ballet and creativity and, you know, making films and all that kind of stuff. And it was just a good way for me to escape. And, you know, like a lot of people just didn't understand it, except, you know, for like two of my friends that sort of, you know, shared the same aspect with, you know, like playing the Lego and stuff. But, you know, aside from that, I was completely on my own with dancing, completely on my own. And I just still remember there was like, you know, always like 3 to 4 kids I knew. I still know their names, unfortunately. But I know it's like nightmare. No. It's you know, back in primary school, they just give me so much criticism over it, and I just sort of started to think like, is this like a manly thing to do? Like, because especially being the younger brother in the family, like my older brother was a freak athlete, so And through that, I sort of wanted to still sort of be like him, where, you know, like I want to be athletically gifted and I want to be liked by a lot of people. And, you know, I just wanted to be cool, you know, and that was sort of, I guess, the wrong way to go about it. But, you know, when you're growing up, like, you know, if you're not popular, like it's very difficult to sort of navigate your way through school, like primary school or high school, you know? So
Yeah, there's so much comparison. There's so much outside noise. Like, and at such a young age, like you wouldn't know any better than to subscribe to it as well. Yes, I can imagine how difficult it would be to like try and navigate that and everything. Can you, and this is primary school as well, like wait until you get into high school where things get even more hostile.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us a bit about that? So
yeah,
you've carried ballet through from primary school to high school, or did it stop there?
it just stopped before I went into high school because I knew that was going to be one of the biggest tipping points for me where, you know, if like I'm going to like, you know, the next level with education. So for me, that was going to be, you know, something where I'd receive a lot more criticism. So through that, I sort of made the difficult choice, like, oh, you know, I have to grow up. I have to be like, you know, tougher. I have to be like my older brother and just play football and play a sport that, you know, I won't like, you know, even though he was enjoying it. But I was sort of letting go of the things that I enjoyed that made me Jaxon and trying to do things that made me like my older brother or what people wanted. And so I think that sort of, again, myself trying to fit in with all my peers, I sort of got the mask that creates me and I threw that away. Like that's who I am as a person. You know, like things I was doing, I felt that were a big foundation of what I like to do that really defined me at the time. I sort of threw that away and said, you know what, like I want to do something different. But in reality, it was just to impress people, you know, and it was just to show people like, oh, you know, I can do it too. I can be a man, I can be popular. And, you know, so I think especially being young and especially being like a boy growing up, it's very hard to have those sort of, I guess, like correct, I guess in a sense, the correct male role models in your life that you need to look up to, that you inherit the values that you want. It's very hard to sort of navigate your way around that. Like you're trying to learn a lot of things in life about yourself and who you are and what you want to do, you know, and you're receiving all this criticism from people. So it's very hard to sort of, you know, find your way around it. Yeah,
definitely. I can tell you've done like a lot of reflection and looked a lot sort of introspectively about, you know, the upbringing and everything that's happened. I wanted to ask, like, when you stopped ballet, did that cut the noise out or did it sort of weigh in on you a little bit more about letting go of the mask that made you Jaxon?
It definitely made it worse, in my opinion. I think just thinking that, oh, you know, like I'm not doing it anymore because, you know, it's girly, and I really did miss it. And I really did, because moving into then doing basketball, all the popular kids, now we're in year 7, we're in high school, and this is the point where there's that massive popular group again. They're all really good at sport. They all have, you know, these like girls and stuff talking to them, and, you know, I want to be like that, but I don't want to, you know, I don't want to throw away things I love. Like I stopped playing with Lego. I've sold it all straight away. I got rid of it. I stopped doing ballet. I stopped making films. I stopped doing a lot of things that I enjoyed doing, and I was trying to find different ways to enjoy my life. But when I was trying to hang around these people, it just wasn't working for me. And I'm like, how do people enjoy this kind of stuff? Like I just can't seem to connect with it. Is there something wrong with me? Is it something that, like, you know, I need to get better at? Or yeah. And so through that, I sort of moved from ballet into basketball, because everyone played basketball, you know, at school. So, and I actually trained my ass off for it, and I got really good, you know, but at that time, it was just to prove to people that, you know, like I want to be one of those kids, you know, and that ended up being terrible. So.
100%. I can imagine. And like, obviously, yeah, still looked within and can see all these themes sort of coming out about, you know, holding that deep regret for like not continuing ballet or not holding onto the Lego sets and everything. Yeah, it's really sad to hear about.
It's a little bit, isn't it?
But it's something that, like, I think a lot of people experience, because you know, you want to succumb to the popular group, or you want to impress that girl that you really like, and how are you going to impress them if you're doing something that isn't really accepted by society? I guess, like, you can look back at it now and say, like, oh, I wish I just kept on to it. But it's like, how? Have you given it much thought as to, like, how you would keep it on the side without it, I guess, having criticisms arise or anything?
Honestly, I don't really know. Like, haven't really ever come to to think about that. Like, when it comes to, like, growing up around that time, like year 7 was the hardest year for me. That was really difficult because I literally then had no friends. And that was I actually moved schools from year 7 to year 8. So because again, I was just desperately just trying to fit in and it just wouldn't work. And so I just found it really difficult to connect with everyone. And all the time, you know, I would get picked on by people at the start of, you know, my schooling experience. I thought it was normal. Like I thought everyone would sort of give out like, you know, just general banter, all that kind of stuff. But then it got to the point where it just get a little bit more aggressive. You know, people would say ruder things. And it got to a point over like the first 6 months of school, I became an incredibly violent kid. And I just became so defensive of what people would say or do. It got to a point where like I pretty much like got kicked out. Like I got handed a suspension note from the principal. My mum dragged me out and said like, we're never coming back to school ever again. And, you know, that was for me a big point where it's like, what am I doing wrong? You know, like what can't I like do properly? Like, can I just not grow up like everyone else, you know? And so it just became this thing where I just was terribly misunderstood. So then I didn't go to school for like 6 months until like basically, you know, the next year when I started in year 8. And that was really, I was just home. I was just at home playing games and just by myself. You know, I was a very, very sad kid at that year. But, you know, like I don't know how I sort of really navigated around it. I never really just sort of coped with it. I just sort of just, you know, I was just a very sad individual. And it was really hard to sort of understand how I would get through that, because I never really thought, oh, you know, like it's going to get better. I just thought it was just going to be the same. That's all I knew, you know? So I never knew like that, you know, like your ability to grow up can be so much better. You know, it's almost like getting a taste of like the high life, you know, you don't know it until you've done it. You know, it's with anything. So I think, look, I've never really thought about it much, but yeah, like it's because it's just so long ago, but I definitely remember those feelings of just like, this is the way it is. And like, I don't have many friends, and that's something I need to accept, unfortunately. But you know, it did change for the better though over a period of time.
Yeah. And we'll definitely get into it, but yeah, it's just sort of like a reflection of this point of time in your life where, yeah, high school isn't for everyone, and nor is primary school, and these unfortunate things. Kids can be nasty, man. Like they can be absolutely horrible.
Really savage.
Yeah, like I'm very privileged and grateful that I had a pretty pleasant like experience through high school, but I can definitely see sort of on the outskirt like a lot of those kids that are a bit isolated and everything. So whether it's like time heals all wounds or something, or a message you'd like to share, like is there anything that you'd pass on to maybe your younger self or someone who is experiencing that?
100%. I'd completely say, don't ever try to impress people. Don't be a people pleaser. It doesn't get you anywhere, and you just are making yourself more unhappy. Like, because when you find things you enjoy doing, that's because those values of what you are doing align with what you want. And once you let go of those things and try to throw them away, all of a sudden what happens is that you start to sort of have this larger disassociation with who you want to be. And that's why it was really hard for me to like sort of earn myself back to that position where I knew what my values were. I knew what I wanted out of my life. I knew what made me happy, and I knew what I wanted. And that's why I think when it comes to younger kids, they need to enjoy themselves. They need to learn. They need to also have correct male role models to look up to. Unfortunately, I don't think there's much in this generation, just saying. But like, I think when it comes to just being a kid, like, you know, it's going to be hard to develop those things. But would I ever go back and change like everything that I've, you know, been through? Probably not, because I wouldn't be sitting here probably next to you talking about this experience and sort of learning the key values of what I've taken away from that. But at the same time though, like tough times create strong people, you know, and yeah, I think that's a simple saying. So
yeah, 100%. And yeah, I guess it's like all those experiences add up and make you the person that you are today. Likewise with myself as well. Like every experience that you are fortunate enough or unfortunately exposed to makes you the person that you are today.
100%.
You mentioned sort of like you were a bit violent due to the bullying and everything. Was that because you internalized everything and weren't able to sort of express yourself?
Yeah, it definitely was. I never really sort of talked to anyone. You know, I was very like, the only person I really talked to was like my mum. Like that was it, you know. And I still remember that this kid that made fun of my shoes. Like I got so angry one day because this kid was just giving me so much crap, and I just lost it. And I'm like, I never got it out of me. I never talked to anyone about it, never expressed those emotions like I could with dancing or like filmmaking or being creative. And I just took it out on this kid. I absolutely took it out on this kid, and that's what led to me pretty much getting suspended. You know, like I put my hands on someone, and you know, it was a really violent way. And just through that point, like it just wouldn't end even after that. And so like I remember my older brother had to go pull this kid aside and like tell him, like, if you say something to my younger brother, like, yeah, I'm like, you're in trouble. And so then that kid stopped. But, you know, I sort of found that when it came to that, like I had to get better at one, confrontation, and two, expressing how I felt. It was just so hard because all the time when things would happen in my classroom and I was getting picked on, I'd get so angry, and I would just, like, most of the times I would just go up to that person, just go straight at them.
Wow, okay.
And it was really, really bad. And I sort of looked at myself now, and I'm like, it's crazy how it came to such an obscene amount of rage that was deep within myself, to the point where, like, if someone just said something, I would just, like, I'd be ready to fight them then and there. And it was really, really, it was just irresponsible of me. And I just didn't have that person that could say, like, directly to my face, like, hey, you know, you need to stop. Like, you need to express this in a better way.
Definitely.
Instead of, you know, like beating people up. You know what I mean?
So when was that turning point? You know, like you've sort of projected, but in a physical way. I think like in this day and age, a lot of people are projecting in a verbal way and like belittling other people. But I guess when it gets to that extent, you know that something's like really deeply sort of wrong or deep-rooted problems are arising. So when was that turning point for you, when someone did come and say, hey, Jaxon, like time to pull your head in a little bit?
Well, this guy was a teacher at my new school that I went to. I went to Blackburn High School. So this guy was called Jeff Veazey, and he only started that same year I moved. So, excuse me.
This is year 8?
This is year 8 now. Okay. So, you know, and it's a fresh start. I'm trying to make sure that I just don't get off on the wrong foot with people. I'm still very defensive though. You know, still pretty violent if someone tips me off. And again, I was just trying to navigate my way through these, you know, different friendship groups and sort of understand like how the dynamic was working, because I knew that something had to change. Like I had to sort of understand how to approach situations better. I didn't know how, but I knew that there had to be a way. There has to be a way somehow. And basically he was my English teacher, Jeff Veazey, when I was in year 8, and he seemed like the strictest like teacher. I was like, you know, very like, you know, he was putting me in my place a lot, and I was just like to myself, oh, this teacher, like he's so strict, like I don't want to go to this class. And then I still remember one day when this kid, like he like sort of hit me like for fun, and he was laughing about it, and so I just grabbed the kid and I like smashed him, and I sent him to hospital, and I felt so bad later on about it, and I got suspended. But Mr. Veazey pulled me aside and said, like, Jaxon, this needs to change. Like, otherwise you're not going to be here anymore at the school. And I'm like, well, I told him, like, what can I do? Like, it's not my fault. I was incredibly rude and just irresponsible the way I was talking to him. And, you know, I was always just like rebelling against what he was telling me to do, until, you know, he was just always there. Like every English class, he was always just like really attentive to me, like, Jaxon, like, what's the understanding of this? Can you interpret this? Like, he was really trying to sort of, I felt like he was almost trying to like pick on me in class. But it came to the point where, you know, I sort of thought about it. I'm like, you know what, like maybe this teacher really does sort of like want to help me. Maybe like, yeah, that might be the case. And so, believe it or not, this man changed my life. He changed my life. He was the only person that I could really just talk to whenever I wanted. And it came to the point where like I was able to just, sometimes if I was really like pissed off with someone or something, I could just leave the class. I go straight to like, you know, where he was in one of the offices and just talk to him. He'd just sit me down and he's like, tell me about your day, and changed my life. It really did.
Yeah. What was, I guess, different about that experience, and what sort of allowed you to open up to him? I know he's like very attentive to you about like sort of engaging you in class. Like I can imagine that would be one aspect where you feel a bit more open towards talking to him. But yeah, what sort of set him apart? Oh,
I don't really know. Like there was just something about him that was just different. Like he he acted like he gave a shit. He cared. And I was sort of looking like in English class, in my year 8 class, like how much he actually cared about us, like just excelling. And he said, I remember there was one thing he said, and I just remember it sticking with me like to this day. He just said, I don't care about how much I get paid at the school. I care about the kids. Like I care about how they're going to excel, and I want to help them grow up into be the best version they are. And I'm like, holy shit, this guy actually like seems like he does care, you know? So it really just sort of made me realize like, damn, like if we actually had more teachers like this guy, like we would have the best education in the world.
100%.
Simple as that.
100%. And it's more like people as well. If we had more people in roles that they truly enjoyed and they truly loved, then the world would be a better place because of
100%.
it. Because people actually give a shit and they want to put their heart and soul into it as well. Yeah, amazing. And I guess like as you're growing up, you know, career conversations and those sorts of things do start to pop up. I definitely want to jump into that with you. Like, what were they like with your parents?
What in regards to like me talking to my parents, or just
like
with
just
how
careers as you grow up? You know, I remember like sort of year 9, 10, those sorts of things. Like, oh, what are you gonna do? Like when you grow up, those conversations.
That's when it got very exciting. So, well, I know exciting. Just very like there's a lot of stuff going on. So
100%.
I was playing very high level football at this time. I was playing like state footy, like TAC, like Oakley Chargers, all that. So basically like the next stepping stone to like go into AFL draft. And I was like really pushing footy hard, and I was loving playing with my friends. And one of like my coach at the time, my club footy, was also the coach at TAC footy. So thanks to him, he also helped push me into that direction of, you know, especially going into the club and like going to the next level. It was a whole different ball game. But when I was with him in the football at the time, I said, you know, I want to play AFL. Like I'm going to play AFL. It wasn't even an option for me. Like failure was not an option. And I remember that I worked so hard. I improved like about tenfold within a year. You know, I went from like being an average footy player to a really good football player. You know, I was playing full forward, goals after goals after goals. Like I was kicking a lot of points, a lot of goals for our team at the time. And I was just understanding like just how to be a leader now, because I also had, you know, Mr. Veezy still in my corner, like helping me. He was pushing me to become like, you know, in the SRC and like SRC captain and, you know, all those different roles in school and how to be like just like a better person, how to be a good leader. I was doing a lot of leadership courses alongside him, thanks to him. And so it's sort of at that time, I was like, you know what, like I want to play AFL, and said that to my parents. They said like, you want to do this? I'm like, I want to go all the way with it. And yeah, like through that whole experience, I loved it up until just one day, I stopped enjoying it. And I just said like, what am I doing? What am I doing in my life? And I was just like, this is something I just don't want to do anymore. And, you know, especially my dad being in the Olympics, you know, like 30 years ago. Yeah, it's a while now.
Wow,
30
really?
years ago. No, 20. 30 years ago now. It's like, you think like the 90s is like 20 years ago. It's like 13
no,
years
it's
ago.
30 years. Literally.
Yeah, like especially with him and, you know, my brother actually like not playing. He was playing also VFL at the time for Carlton. He was doing really well, and, you know, he can play AFL at any moment he wants. Like he's a much better athlete than me. He always has been, you know, but I just had the difference with himself was he had so much natural talent. I had no talent. So I had to sort of like build off nothing. But, you know, I think anyone can do it. It just takes a longer period of time compared to someone being talented. But yeah, it was talking to him about it was, sorry, talking to my parents about like my career goals. It was like, you know, I want to do well in, you know, my education. I want to go play AFL. So yeah, that became the point where, you know, I didn't even pick up a weight really. Like I never really picked up anything. Like I just was some skinny football player who was playing, and I loved it. I loved every process of it. Yeah.
And I think it gets to that point where it's like, I don't know. And it's amazing that you were able to take sort of the sporting aspect to such an elite level. Not many kids are able to do that. Which is kind of sad sometimes. Like you start to drop it because, you know, VCE becomes I guess like a main focus, or academia and everything. But what was that I don't know moment like, and how did that wane on you?
Well, it was only for a brief few months, and all of a sudden I was just like, you know what, like I remember I always had these aspirations of just like going to America. Like I've always wanted to go to America. I want to live there, you know. And some people might say, oh, that's obscene. Like, why are you thinking of doing that in today's day and age? But like, I still think, you know, like I do want to live there. You know, I've been there a few times already. I love the environment. I love the people there. Got a lot of friends over there as well. But when I was there, I was, like just after my sort of brief football, career attempt, I was sort of within those few months, sort of just deciding what I wanted to do. I was like, I just want to like live in America. How can I do that? And I realized like, I can do like an exchange student thing for like American football. I thought that'd be a great idea. And so I was just like, okay, like who's my favorite NFL player? Rob Gronkowski, the tight end. He's like 2 meters tall. He's like 120, 30 kilos, like running back quick, big man. Big boy. So I was like, well, I'm skinny. I got to put on some weight and start training.
Yeah.
So yeah, my parents, they had a really like fully decked out home gym, like massive home gym. I'm talking like this is like the dream, and it's gone before COVID. But when I was in there, I was just training. I was sort of like learning, like my dad was teaching me how to do like, this is how to do a leg press. This is how to squat. This is how to bench press. This is how to deadlift, all the basic foundation movements, and just started putting on like a bit of weight pretty quickly. Like I went from like only deadlifting like 60 kilos. Next week I'd deadlift 100. Like the next week I'd do like, like 120. Like, and I remember like my first 100 kilo squat, like after 2 weeks of just doing body weight squats, didn't know how to do it. My dad's just like, just put the bar on your back, squat down and go back up. And I'm like, okay, this is how we do it. 100 kilos
That's
done.
awesome. No, it's awesome having those role models in your life, especially with the gym. I find like when you teach the foundations properly, like you don't get injured. You have a lot, like a greater variety and wealth of knowledge with how to use your body in a functional way. Like my mum's a PT, and thankfully she put me into like this Young Guns program at Workshop Q, so shout out, where they taught me sort of the fundamentals and foundations of how to move your body, which is so important. It
is definitely. Like I think when also there's this common, I guess, misconception with younger kids, it's like, if they're going to weight training and stunt their growth, like no, like you're not going to stunt their growth. It's actually going to aid with their development, as into becoming adolescents, and I think that's why it's very important to, again, like when I one day become like a father, like I want to teach my children how to train. It's like, you don't need to become Mr. Olympia, but you can, develop the foundations and sort of apply that to whatever you want to do in your life. But you need to, of course, look after yourself. You need to look after your body, your mind, and your spirit.
Definitely.
So
you started training in the gym. Where did that sort of amount to?
This was like end of 2015 now. I was like 70 kilos, like pretty skinny, like I was running and stuff, like pretty much pissed off the running. I was done. I was like, all right, start lifting some weight. So I started just eating. I remember my first protein shake was like an Optimum Nutrition, like, whey protein. I was like, oh, this is really good. Like, I was cooking like chicken breasts and I was like, garnishing it up and shit. And I was thinking like I was some bodybuilder. I'm like, I think I'm like a bodybuilder almost. But then all of a sudden I remember this picture. Actually, no, it was a muscular development magazine. And it was of Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Classic.
This is where all the origin stories occur.
Yeah, literally.
And I saw this picture. I'm like, was Arnold Schwarzenegger a bodybuilder? I just thought he was just the Terminator. And I was like, no wonder why he looks so good. And then that was it. That first glance at that magazine, I still got that in my house. I'm going to frame that one day. I remember looking at that and being like, I want to do this. This is the one thing in my life that I'm not going to quit on, no matter how hard it gets. And seeing that, I went like crazy with training, with eating. I got so strong so quick. I put on a lot of muscle. I did the biggest dirty bulk as well, though. Like followed some Arnold blueprint to the mass phase blueprint thing he has, and that was good. I was having like just mass gainer shakes and eating all this crap food, but like I remember within 4 months I put on like 30 kilos.
30
I went from like 71, 72, like 100.6 kilos. And I felt so proud of myself, and I was just sitting there like a bloated puffer fish, and everyone was like, "What are you doing, Jaxon?" Like at school, I'm like, eating, man.
Oh my god, what a transformation! Like from going to footy to like packing on all this size. Was this during the sort of last few years of high school, or was this?
Yeah, this is now so basically now picking up the weight. That was end of year 10, start of year 11 now.
Okay, so. Amazing. I feel like that's when the peak gains are made.
It's like, and then you go on YouTube, you start watching like all the old school bodybuilding videos. It's like this. it's just the most amazing experience ever. Like the first time you're seeing all this bodybuilding stuff, it's like, oh my gosh, like I never knew like Ronnie Coleman and Jay Cutler, like, you know, battled it out for years. And like you saw like Arnold Schwarzenegger at the 1980 Olympia and like Mike Mensa and all these other bodybuilders. I'm like, holy shit, this is amazing. Like
so cool,
it was so cool. Yeah.
Literally.
It was just amazing, man. Yeah.
Nah, and it's pretty fortuitous, I guess, like reflecting back on this high school journey where you've stumbled across your English teacher, you've stumbled across someone from the footy team who have been these sort of role models for yourself and maybe even the magazine as well. Like how important are these figures in your life and the way they've paved sort of where you are today?
Yeah, very, very important. Like especially with my English teacher, he was going to become the assistant principal a couple of years ago until I unfortunately found out during COVID that he had a heart attack and he died. And I was like pretty sad about it. Like, yeah, it makes you sort of tear up a bit, like thinking about it. But it's just because like he really shaped me into who I am. And he was just such a great role model to have in my life because he was someone that I always knew just like he was there to help people. Yeah. So it was just pretty full on. Like, so
yeah, no, you're okay. It's all good.
Yeah. But yeah, with him, he was someone that I could just always like just turn to and stuff. And, you know, I just like I was so annoyed. Just like, why did like these shitty things have to happen to really good people? And so, yeah, like he was a very, like, that's why I always consistently talk about him because like I want him to live on, especially with his family though. But like, you know, and it pained me more because I couldn't even go like to his funeral in COVID, which like that pissed me off so much.
100%.
But yeah, I watched it online. It was a beautiful experience, and you know they all celebrated his life, which was great. But yeah, like I want to sort of like just keep his name like living on because like I wouldn't without him. Like I think I wouldn't have really changed, and especially I wouldn't have become the person that I would want to be. Like I always know that like I'll never be the person that I want to be, but I'm always striving for it, you know. And he always taught me those like inherent values to have. But yeah, then when it came with my my football coach. He was a great inspiration for me as well at the time. And, you know, I haven't been in contact with him for a long time, unfortunately. But Arnold as well, though, was, well, he's the man. He's the GOAT. I had the amazing privilege of meeting him as well and shaking his hand. So that was incredible. And, yeah, just sort of like realizing that, you know, seeing his journey was something that I felt so like, you know, I felt almost like it was like my journey as well, where, you know, we're both misunderstood. And, you know, like I think we all like to sort of align ourselves with how people, you know, famous people were brought up. But I think the most common thing is about Arnold Schwarzenegger, for example, any sort of like famous individual who's worked up their way from nothing to something. I think a lot of the time it's not because that they're different people, but they're the same. They're just like every one of us. And they're just people who just worked very, very hard, you know, especially even like with incredibly successful individuals, like with high net worths or high income. There's nothing really like there's not really anything inherently like largely different about them. It's just that they just work very, very hard and they're very, very passionate people about what they do. And that's why then it came into, you know, the whole coaching scene and the gym scene and, you know, but with those like bodybuilding role models, like, you know, back then I think it was a bit better than sort of what it was now. Like there's still a lot of great role models, but I think it's sort of like we need to sort of just step up for more younger males, especially with the stigma that we have on like body image too. I've been, you know, reading and having a lot of insight on that and sort of seeing how the, you know, especially with women as well, it's been prominent for decades, but especially now with men, it's getting inherently worse as well, where, you know, we have to look shredded, we have to look so big, you know, we have to look like a bodybuilder, and, you know, people say, oh, I want to look like you, and when I tell them, I'm like, well, you know, that's probably not going to be a good idea because it's not actually healthy being a competitive bodybuilder, and, you know, it's about having a balance. So, you know, there's a lot of these different things that I think in society we need to sort of not change, but sort of pivot on, you know? And I think like we are still heading in sort of that direction, but I think now with social media as well is the biggest one, which can be a big crux for us, you know? So, and just having like all these people shredded on Instagram, posting stuff all the time. Like that's why I post my off-season pictures like now being like 130 kilos, you know, not like in the best shape. Like I'm, you know, just trying to push food, trying to push training, but keeping it honest because, hey, like I don't look like 4 weeks out year round. It's not healthy.
Man. Yeah, literally. Well, I can see like how influential those role models have been in sort of paving the way for you to become this role model as well. And it's amazing that you're sort of taking the initiative to be that role model, but an honest one as well. I know social media can be such, a double-edged sword. Like, you can promote such beautiful things, but then the dark side of it is like the filters, the lighting, the editing, like prime time or all these sort of things that make it so sterile and just not the authentic thing that it should be, and it has been sort of produced for. I definitely want to talk about sort of like post-gym and everything. Well, not post-gym, still gymming and everything, but like during that growth phase, sort of graduating, what the conversation was looking like there. Like, did you know that you wanted to get into coaching? Did you know that you'd be a shareholder at Emerge? Like, what's happening here?
Well, honestly, everything that I'm doing now, I never even thought I'd be doing it. Like, I sort of had a feeling one day, it's like, you know, maybe one day on the cards, like just maybe I would be interested in having sort of like a gym, you know, but I've never really ever thought about it directly and having that opportunity that I had now. But especially though with coaching, that was the biggest like push out of nowhere. Yeah, I graduated, I had no money. I, you know, had a car hand me down that my dad gave me, which I'm grateful for, you know, and I just had no money. Like, and I'm sitting there like, you know, I was with my I'm with my fiance there, like just my girlfriend at the time, and I was just like, I need a job. So I just started digging holes every day, just digging holes for this guy and just making money. And I was like, I don't know what to do, but like, I know this is like, this is a start of something. Like, you know, I'm just doing something. I'm being useful. I don't want to be, you know, I think as men in psychology, like we don't want to be useless individuals. We want to have responsibility. We want to just do something, you know, especially as young men. It's like, I don't know what to do. It's like, do something. Do like, just at least even like just move this to there. Like Jordan Peterson said that, literally, like move a rock from here to there. Be useful, you know. And I think that's why there was a big hole with myself, even though I knew where I wanted to go with like, you know, bodybuilding. But it was like, aside from that, like I need to make money. I need to do something. I need to have responsibility. You know, I want to also like, you know, pay for things for myself, my girlfriend, and one day for my family, like, you know, in time. And so that sort of led into me the next, like that year of, you know, just digging holes and stuff. I'm like, all right. I was actually at the time in year 12 with my knowledge of what I knew about nutrition and training and all those different nuances and metrics. I sort of then was actually like technically online coaching a few friends. I didn't even realize online coaching was a real thing back then because it wasn't.
Such a thing. Yeah.
I didn't realize I was pretty much in it at the very beginning before it even started. But, you know, I made my own Excel spreadsheets. You know, most people just get like the templates now, but like I made my own from scratch. And I said to my mate, like at the time, he wanted to lose like 25 kilos because he was overweight. I said, okay, like follow this diet, follow this training. Like, you know, it wasn't perfect, but yeah, he lost like 30 kilos and he was doing really well and he kept the weight off and now he's into powerlifting and, you know, he's doing really well. And then, for example, I had another friend of mine that I was coaching too, and, you know, he wanted to put on some muscle. I'm like, okay, well, you know, you're really skinny. You need to eat more. You need to eat more frequently. You need to eat more carbohydrates. You also need to like, you know, increase your protein intake, like also your vegetable and also like consistent intake of like fruits. So a lot of these things sort of were there, but I didn't really sort of have the epiphany of seeing them. And that's why then I realized, I'm like, you know what, like the coaching industry is actually making good money. So, you know, and I was sort of, like, I was just trying to make money. So I was like, well, this seems like I'm not killing myself every day digging holes. Better than nothing. Yeah. You know, I said, well, even if it makes the same amount of money, I'd rather do that than not dig holes, you know, because it's, you know, being a laborer was just like a dead end job, you know, which is something which is fine to do. It's not you shouldn't ever be shameful of having a job like that. You know, I used to have jobs like that all the time, but, you know, I got into coaching and I started to become, you know, like studying on the campus to become a personal trainer. And I got my Cert 3 and 4 within a few months because I was doing, you know, like PE back in high school. And so just pretty much like a bit of a reiteration of it all, but just a little bit more nuance with like business stuff and how to manage coaching, how to be also like, you know, very personalized with the individual face to face, you know. So yeah, and through that, I pretty much just became only a face-to-face coach. So I sort of forgot a little bit about the online coaching. Like I had all their programs on the online system, but then I'd coach them in person. So, and that sort of, again, just led into, I started coaching a lot of people at a previous gym that I was working at. And yeah, that sort of led me to a few people wanting me to, you know, prep them for bodybuilding shows. And then, yeah, I sort of did that. It was a really fun experience. But then my fiance, Emmy, so start of the year, we took her through a bodybuilding show. And I was like, all right, let's do this. You know, if you want to, I'll help you just get to the end. She was 3 weeks out and very hungry, very tired. And then we started to sort of like, you know, just manipulate her training and her diet a bit more. And yeah, basically it got to the point where she, you know, she nearly got a pro card like 2 or 3 times in one show in each different like division. She won the Bikini Open Tall in A and B Australia, which was, you know, incredible. Like I was super, super wrapped with her. And then we did ICN as well a few weeks later where she won the overall in the swimsuit class. And then she came, she got a few medals in each divisions for the bikini classes. And then she came like top 4 or something in the whole open overall. So, and that was a very, very stacked lineup. Like that was like, you know, some great athletes there. So yeah. And basically through that, I really enjoyed the day and the experience and seeing how happy she was. I'm like, this is actually really fun. And I'm like, you know, I was sort of doubting my ability a little bit here and there, like, you know, and I never told Emmy, but, you know, I think as coaches, we always sort of second guess what we're doing. It's like, okay, is this the right decision? Is this the correct way of going about it? What could I do better? But now sort of it's gotten to the point where, you know, each individual is different. Like with Emmy leading up to her, before her 1 week out, every 5 days she was eating McDonald's and Yochi. And people think it's the dumbest thing ever, you know, eating those certain foods when you're shredded as, you know, like going to a bodybuilding show. But one, like for her, refeeds weren't going to be that effective. You know, we knew that for her to actually de-stress and drop water, especially drop weight, to make sure we consistently see how leaner she looked, that we can make sure that, you know, she would have these sort of different outings of food, you know, and I go with her. So that's why, like, when it comes to each athlete now, it's very, very specialized, and especially with like an off season, like, you know, I've had a very, very large intake of clients over the past couple of months, you know, to the point where I basically made it full time now, you know, but through that, it was more just about sort of having like an ability to connect the dots for a long period of time. That's why with a lot of athletes who want to compete within a year, I say no. I usually say, like, in order for this coaching process to work, I need to know how your body works. I need to know how mentally you work as well. And also the communication needs to be there. And that pretty much leads to, especially each athlete is going to be different. Some people might only do refeeds for their preps. Some people might be doing free meals. Some people might be doing free meals every few days. Some people might be doing macros. Like, it really just depends. And this is why, though, each coach in this industry has their niche and they should stick with it. And for me, it was especially like, I really love coaching lifestyle people, but it was just moving into just like competitive athletes straight away. And I never thought I'd sort of ever move into that, you know? So yeah, it was really exciting. It was
incredible
just like,
journey, man.
Like
Literally.
out of nowhere.
So much to unpack there. I think, like, from what it sounds like, you've accumulated a wealth of knowledge over the years of just like trial and error, and then obviously acquired the degree and everything. So you're sort of ticking the boxes in terms of you're still reaching out and finding those outlets where you can better yourself, which is incredible to hear. Yeah. And it sort of lights me up about the individualization of like athletes. Like, not everyone ticks the same way. So trying to expand your knowledge and your wealth in that aspect as well to better your clients. So it seems like all these pieces were apparent before you sort of considered coaching full time. What were the sort of routes you took to start to piece them together? Or was it that sort of culmination of, okay, all these athletes are coming in, might as well make this full time? Well,
it sort of just got to the point where I was just getting so busy. I just couldn't like fulfill a lot of things with like my other work lives and, you know, my work lives. And I sort of realized, like, with coaching now, like especially being like a prep coach, it's a 24-hour job. I'm always on my phone. Like, you know, my parents always see me on my phone, like, Jaxon, like, just like, why are you always on your phone? You're always on your computer. I'm like, because like when if I'm out at dinner and I've got a prep athlete that's 2 weeks out and they're like, you know, having a panic attack about, you know, like if they ate something slightly off plan, I have to message them and make sure that I'm there for them. Because especially on a prep athlete, like, you're being mentally volatile, you know, especially that close to a show, you're relying on fumes. You're basically running on fumes, man. Like, energy wise, mentally wise. Like, you're just, all you know is eat, sleep, like, train.
Yeah. That's
bed.
it.
Basically, those are the main things you get done for the day, and the cardio. But I think it just sort of came to the point where I was just picking up a lot of athletes. I was just getting really busy.
Yeah.
And I really just wanted to like step up my game. And now it's, you know, I've improved in a lot of different areas as well, and especially the upskilling on different things, like, you know, on an educational basis. And, you know, I think just having a good education as well, a lot of people sort of don't aspire to that. And I sort of think that it's something that it's very dogmatic to think of your ability to sort of think you're a good coach without a sort of like a groundbreaking level of application from educational standards. Like, so I think that sort of comes from like, you know, at the end of the day, like, yes, you don't need to have a PhD to be a prep coach, but it can help. So that's why I think if you have the ability to do those things and study and sort of research more and understand how the human body works and how to sort of manipulate things more effectively for your clients to get a certain edge on like a competition basis, do it. And I think that's why, you know, I did have a very lazy mindset for a while, not with coaching, but just with sort of, you know, how I was going throughout my day, and I just wasn't organized as much. And then now everything's really set in stone. And it just makes everything easier. You know, I'm really, really happy with how my clients are progressing, you know, especially with, you know, my prep athletes, also my, also like Gen Pop lifestyle athletes. They're awesome to coach as well. You know, it's a great experience. Sort of like every time you take on a new individual, you're just learning more about the world, you know, and you always find that with a new client or a new athlete or whatever it is, like that comes your way, it's like another opportunity to learn. And I think that's why, like, when it comes to coaching, if you're just so set in your ways, like it's a very, I guess it's not really that precacious, you know? And that's why I find, like, when it comes to, you know, wanting to always learn, like there's this saying, like, being autodidactic, you know, it's essentially like you want to learn how to learn. It's like if you have that mindset throughout your life, you're always going to be an individual who is going to have a lot of knowledge, because, you know, Confucius basically said, you know, something along the lines of where, you know, you are a fool if you ask, you know, within that time how to learn something. But if you never ask the question, you are a fool for a lifetime. And that's like, I think, like naivety is, you know, the luxury of people who, you know, who are arrogant. That's why when it comes to always like wanting to learn, it's so important, you know, not just with education though, with anything. You're always asking about, hey, like, how do you do this? Like, how do you run this podcast? Like, how does this stem from nothing, you know? So that's why I think always this wanting to learn from how people are very good at what they do is something that is never a wrong thing to ask as well.
Yeah. I've just learned a whole lot there. Far out. That's an amazing quote and just a great mindset to have about life. I think like when you get stagnant and you don't sort of progress or seek to progress yourself in a better way, then yeah, I think everyone sort of leaves you and you get left behind.
100%. And I think as well, like, sorry to interject there,
you're
but
okay.
You know, I think, you know, I always go back to Jordan Peterson. He's just such a great individual to sort of look towards, especially young men, you know, really look up to this individual. He was explaining how, you know, like, yes, you are going to be afraid of, you know, pushing yourself to the next level and the fear of failure and, you know, and of course not reaching that sort of mark, but you should be more afraid about staying where you are.
100%.
Because everyone is moving and time doesn't stop. And I think that's why when it comes to, you always have to consistently plan for what you want. And I think that's why short-term goals, you know, long-term goals. Like, remember the SMART goals we learned?
Yeah, SMART goals.
I still have them.
You know,
I still use them.
Nah, 100%,
you know,
man.
It's, yeah.
I think there's the conversation about it's okay to sort of be lost with like what you're doing, but as long as you're moving. So it's like, as long as I'm, because I'm in a situation where it's like I'm graduating uni. I'm not too sure what I want to do, but it's like I'm doing things like the podcast, reaching out to individuals and just keeping on the move. Whereas like I could be, I don't know, just sitting in my room playing games or something.
Yeah.
But whether games could lead to, I don't know, competitive gaming, like there's a lot of money there as well. But where are you finding outlets to continue moving is probably the best way to think about it. I wanted to ask as well, there's 24 hours in a day. How do you sort of accommodate for your clients and everything? I was having a chat with an ex-PT who dropped out to go into corporate because he felt that he couldn't spread his time wide enough to his clients to meet their needs, because he found that he was getting that many clients and then he'd try and onboard staff to coach on behalf of him. But at the end of the day, people are there for you.
100%. And I think that's why though, like when you're signing up to a coaching collective, for example, like if you want to be with a specific coach, like usually, and you're having individuals working under you and you're not explaining to them that they're being coached by someone else, I think it's incredibly wrong. Like that's why when it comes to, you know, like owning a business and having individuals work under you, if an individual client comes to you for you, they're paying for you. And if they're paying for someone else, having that option, I think that's what creates, again, more trust with clients. So when it comes to, I think, with like also managing time 24 hours throughout the day, just like making sure you've got, like, there's a lot of time spent doing weird things like cleaning stuff, or like even just like eating meals. Like I eat like nearly 7,000 calories a day. So like it's on the go. Yeah. Like I'm eating a meal after this and I'll go train. Like, you know, and it's a lot of the time, like also knowing days when it's going to get really busy. Like there'll be days where I'm on like, you know, on the go 16 hours a day, plus training, plus my cardio, then go to sleep, maintain relationships as well.
Yeah.
You know, and then there's days where I can chill out, like on a Sunday, like today. You know, so I think it's also just about like knowing when to have specific things set in stone when it comes to planning. That's very important, because I never ever planned anything. I was like, oh yeah, I'll just remember it. And then I just don't end up remembering it, and then just missing out on important things to do. So that was just me being, you know, my naive young self in my early 20s. But, you know, it's definitely changed so now over time, because, you know, I realized that, you know, when you've got very, very large, you know, long-term goals and you sort of break them down into like months, weeks and days, that's not that long.
Yeah.
So I think that's what also pushes me to always make sure that I'm always organized now. And, you know, at the end of the day though, like discipline is not about waking up at 5 a.m. every day, like on the dot. That's not discipline. That's being like a fucking robot. That's stupid. That's, you know, we're all human, especially some of the most successful people in whatever industry that they're in. Sometimes they might sleep into like 5, 6 a.m., like 7 a.m. It happens. Like it's very, very normal. I think we always look at like these David Goggins videos and say, oh, you know, like stay hard. Like, you know, we have to be like 100% all the time. And like, you know, have to run like 10 miles a day. Like it's not, life doesn't really work like that. You know, like we need to accommodate time for where we push really hard for what we want and then we pull back. You know, they are going to, like most of your life, you are going to be, you're never going to be balanced. You're never going to have a work-life balance. Like I don't, but I'm happy with that because I know in the future that I can have the life balance over work, you know?
Yeah.
And that's why when it comes to a lot of these different nuances with organization and time, I think being younger, we have to make sure that we're always going to be, again, like looking at our long-term goals and then breaking them down. And that makes you realize like, holy crap, like I've only got like 10 weeks until I got to do this. Like, and that means if I don't do this week, I'm already pushed back another week. So, and creating sort of like whatever fuel you have, it's like what Alex Hormozy said, like whatever fuel you have, use it to push yourself as well. Yeah.
Fucking love that, man. That's incredible.
Yes.
And I think it goes back to that topic of social media where it's like if you're not pushing like a really hard niche or message, I think like immediately of like Liver King and how he was like, I only eat animal diets, and then he got like exposed for like the mass amount of steroids and all that sort of stuff. But it's like you don't get noticed if you don't push that sort of message.
Yeah.
But it's like let's not regress, but let's just like be honest here. Like
I'm
I'm not going to run 10 miles every day because my body, like my knees are going to like blow out of the proportion. And like waking up at 5 a.m., like you said, is robotic. Like sometimes your body needs rest and
100%.
those sorts of things. So I love that message.
Yep.
I want to talk about Emmy. You're recently engaged. Congratulations.
Yes, thank you.
How has she been in this whole process of life? You're like so young, but she sounds like she's been such a staple to the career aspect, just you being a person and your training aspect as well. Like she sounds like she's had such an influence on you you, Jaxon.
Oh,
like,
definitely. Like massive influence. I think, you know, this is our 6th year of being together and we've known each other for 10 years now. You know, we went to the same high school as well. So we started dating in high school. So, but when it came to her and I, like, you know, like started to date, again, I had no money and she believed in what I wanted to do as a person, moved to America, and we had the same values. We still have the same values, even though they might shift, you know, over the period of time, but not, you know, not too much. But I think with her and I, like, we just like had this synergy. It's like, we know exactly what each other's thinking. We know what to say. We say things for each other. Like, it's just, there's this sort of connection that I can't explain. It's like, you really can't explain it. You can't sort of put it into words. You can't even quantify like the type of chemistry that Emmy and I have, where like she's like my teammate. Like she is someone that I can rely on, like if I'm ever like gonna die or something, you know, like well, you should with your fiance.
Yeah,
you know, but
yeah, no, that is an obligation, mate.
yeah, but I think a lot of the time though, like especially because again today's society, a lot of people have struggles with like trying to find that individual that they want to connect with and be with. But like, I wasn't like actively seeking that until like I realized she was in my life. She was my best friend. And she was like always sticking up for me and stuff in high school and always just like being there for me emotionally as a friend. And I was also just trying to be a really good friend with her. And, you know, again, I never ever wanted to like, you know, like be some friend who was a guy who was like, you know, trying to be keen on her and just, you know, cringy stuff. But, you know, basically with her and I, like, I just wanted, you know, like for us to just have an amazing family together. We want to be respected. We want to be good in our fields of whatever industry we're in. And with her, she has helped me so much with all the things that I've gone through. Like I was going to compete a few years ago and I had a pretty scary health concern. I pretty much had like an issue with my electrolytes to the point where like if it got worse, I could have suffered fatally. And she was with me like tooth and nail through every single thing. And that was a very, very scary journey. But with all the lows that she's been with me, she's always been with me for the highs. And, you know, like she's always supported me and been honest too. I think that, you know, having someone in your corner that you can look towards as not just a lover, but someone who's a teammate and also someone who's honest and who can really tear down, you know, your walls and tell you like, hey, like, you shouldn't be doing this. This isn't who you are as a person. You should be better than that. Or, you know, I'm proud of you. I love you. Stuff like that. And it pushes me every single day. And especially now, you know, being like recently engaged, all of a sudden your like, I don't know, your environment about developing yourself sort of changes. It's almost like instead of like, I want to make money and I want to make a name for myself, I want to make a legacy. It's like, I want to do this for us. You know, it's like a team player mindset. And this is why, like, look, I really do encourage, you know, people to go out there and find that other half of theirs. And, you know, like this feeling of being engaged, it's something that I wish like a lot of people like can experience because it's amazing. It's amazing having that person that you can just rely on. And yeah, it's just, again, going back though to how she's helped me. She's just helped me maintain my organization with a lot of things. She's sort of found things with my coaching, which like was not adding up, like on admin back end stuff, you know, and she was always just giving me advice like, hey, you should do this more. You should push this more. You should push your advertising more, your social media. Like I never did that kind of stuff. And I was like, oh, I never really thought about it. And then all of a sudden, you know, like bang, I get like 7 client, like, you know, things after posting transformation. It's like, oh, okay. Like it works. So she knows what she's doing. So at the same time, we are the same person, but also we're a little bit different where it complements each other though, you know? And so that's why the chemistry is just really good.
I love the idea of how you speak about you guys being a team and like that she is a teammate. And I think like relationships are so important when you consider them as like a teammate instead of like, oh, just a lover or I don't know, however else you would consider a partner, because at the end of the day, it's like, yes, you both are part of a team and you're working towards a higher goal. So no, I love that so much. And I'm sure she'll enjoy that sentiment.
Yeah, I hope she does.
Yeah, literally, shout out. I do want to talk about men's mental health and then we'll get into a couple questions to finish off. But
100%.
You know, like this whole life story, it sounds like the mental health aspect was definitely like sort of down in the gutter a little bit. Like you've let go of something that you love in the form of ballet and Lego and being your creative self. And then you've let this out onto other people, unfortunately, but then sort of come to terms with it through mentorships. Like roller coaster of emotions. Yeah. What's it all like and what does mental health mean to you?
I think like, especially with like men's mental health, you know, like I think it's a very tricky subject because a lot of the time when, you know, I've talked to a few friends and, you know, I know that deep down they have a lot of issues going on with their lifestyle and they don't want to admit it. I think that's being naive and not coming to terms of how your current life is. And then, for example, on the other end of the spectrum where, you know, I might have people, you know, like a friend coming to me saying, oh, you know, like I'm like depressed. It's hard because, you know, like, when it came to mental health, like it was something I wanted to bring to light a lot more about something in regards to like having depression or having sort of certain mental illnesses. It's like when I look at it now as an individual who was depressed, I actually wasn't because I had feelings of depression very consistently. And I think it was something that I sort of found was weird. I'm like, hold on a sec, like, but mental health exists. If I'm feeling depressed, I'm depressed. No, there's a big difference. So I think that's why when it comes to a lot of young men who are in certain mindsets, it's not going to be forever. And it's something that I do want to assure to those younger men, especially as well, like, because if you do have feelings of anxiety, which, you know, I used to have a lot, especially like 6 months ago, it doesn't make you an anxious person. Like, you don't let those sort of feelings define you as an individual. Like, you don't let anything define you in your life. Like, the values that you have and the actions that you commit are the values and who you are as a person. Those are the things that define you. So that's why when it came to like talking about this subject, it was very, very interesting to me, because I love bringing this to light and sort of explaining to people, like, in this day and age, like, a lot of us individuals, we don't believe in our ability to do things. We always think that, you know, we're always downplaying, like, oh, you know, like, you know, I'm not that good, it's all right. Like, I think I had a really good chat with someone from the gym who is an incredible athlete, and this person really just came up to me and just said, hey, like, how do you deal with all these things? I'm like, I remember I told him, I said, dude, like, you take yourself for granted. Like, you need to show up more for yourself. You need to just know that you are that person. Like, you are him, you know? And, you know, like, just know that if you want to excel at something, you need to know that deep down, because especially no matter how good of an athlete is, if they think that if they think they're obsolete, they're going to be obsolete. You know, and I had this mindset as well, being a bodybuilder. Everyone telling me, like, in my ear, like, you're going to win. You're going to get like your pro card. You look awesome. Like, you look like the next C-bum. I'm like, I don't even think like anything of that. Like, why are you telling me this? Like, why are you sort of like messing with my head? And I think it's not about that. It's almost just knowing, like, as an individual, you need to, in a sense, just believe in yourself. Like, believe in your abilities and know that, yes, like, I might not be the smartest person. I might not be the richest person. I might not have the most influence, you know, compared to other people, but it's your own race. You're running your own race. Simple as that. That's all it is. And I think that's why when I had a talk with this athlete, you know, I don't want to name him to keep it private, of course, but, you know, I told him, I said, dude, you are so strong. Like, you're pulling like nearly 350 kilos, and like, just seeing how much of a humble athlete you are, but yet I can see that you're struggling to sort of like just walk in the room and own it. You know, you own like that sort of that niche of what you have. Like, you need to sort of have that more for you. And it was really tricky, because we were just talking about how, you know, when it came to just our mental health and our upbringing, he had a very similar upbringing, unfortunately, with, you know, with a lot of things. I think like connecting with people on that was amazing, because especially, again, going back to the whole, you know, issue of men's mental health, it's almost impossible talking to other men about it if they haven't experienced those kind of things. So, you know, and that's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing if you're going to talk to individuals that haven't gone through it, but it's a lot better to connect with individuals who have gone through it. And that's why, like, I sort of want to create training camps with, you know, younger teenage boys, because, you know, I remember when I was their age and I had a lot of emotions I wanted to like express, but I didn't know how to do it. And I think that's why like camaraderie and brotherhood with amongst men is so important. You know, like, I think, you know, sometimes I really do envy how women can just talk about their emotions. Like, oh, you know, I had such like a bad day. It's like, how do you do that? Like, you know,
man.
And seeing now how with men, it's almost impossible to do that. Like, especially our dinner with a good friend of mine, like a while ago, and I knew he wanted to say something, like, you want to tell me something. And then, yeah, he did tell me something about some stuff going on with him. And I was like, you don't need to like try to sit me down. Like, if you just want to call me, just call me.
100%.
Yeah.
I think I think a lot of men ask for like permission to sort of talk, but sometimes they can't find the words even. Yeah. I resonate so highly with the idea of women being able to just like talk about like anything that happened and everything. And sometimes that's not the case, but yeah, for the most part, like, a lot of women are sort of in touch with their emotions and everything, whereas men, it's this stigma, it's this taboo still, unfortunately. Yeah. And it's a hard skill to teach, like being able to express those sorts of things. So I'm keen to see it if you do training camps. I think it's so important.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I think though, like, just going back to that quickly is, you know, it's important to talk about your emotions. Like, for example, like, if something's hard, it's okay to cry. It's okay to say, like, this shit is so hard. I don't know how I'm going to do it. And it's okay to be emotional, but then as men though, we need to get up after that and say, okay, like, you know what? I've got it out. Like I've been emotional, but now it's time to put in that action. And I think a lot of the time it's like, oh, if you just push it aside and, you know, like just do it, it's going to bottle up and make it worse. And I've done that before very recently too. And it was the worst thing I ever did, you know. And that's why, though, if we're just going to be emotional and sit down and do nothing and not be, I guess, in a sense, productive or useful when we're, you know, going through these things, it's a very difficult to be a man, because I think that as men, we need to, yes, be emotional. We have that feminine and that masculine side of us. And I think if we're too on one side of the spectrum, you know, we're never ever going to be having that balance. As men, we need balance, you know, being in touch with our emotions, being loving fathers, being, you know, incredible friends, you know, being humorous, being funny. Then the other side of our masculine side is very dominant, very powerful, very, you know, steadfast, very, you know, precacious, like all these different values. There is a balance though with them, you know, and that's why when it comes to, you know, being a man, it's like, yes, we need to talk about our emotions, but also at the same time, we need to be, you know, we need to push forward, don't be productive. So I think that's a good balance to have, but yeah.
Yeah, love that rhetoric, man. We'll get into some questions. I'm just mindful of time. It's been an awesome chat.
Oh, I know, it's been a minute.
Far out. Literally. Oh gosh, we didn't even touch on Emerge. Far out. But
Damn, that's right.
Naveed wanted to ask whether you're expanding Emerge. Can we disclose?
Look, honestly, right now, I don't think we can disclose that. But look, I think like speaking like for Emerge and like being involved in it, like our goal is to help people become the best version of themselves. And by, for example, if we were to expand, you know, and that would improve more people's lives, I would love to be a part of that as well. You know, but at the end of the day, though, it's a decision that all of us, though, have to sort of, you know, come and sit down and sort of like make the decision to do so. But like, if it was like me, I would love to, you know, be able to create more influence amongst, you know, the brand, because, you know, I love the brand. Like, you know, we all bleed for it, you know, we all stand by it, and
repping the merch.
Yeah, repping the gang. I love it.
Love it. Amazing. No, I love that so much. Thank you for sharing. The Flexing Physio, Dan, asked, what's a quote or mantra that keeps you going?
That keeps me going? Yeah, I've never really it's a good question. It's something I've never really ever thought about is, I don't know, stay hard. No, I'm kidding. No, it's a good one. No, it's too simple. I think one would be...
There's a few. They've been scattered across the podcast, I reckon.
They have. I really honestly think if it was to boil down to one, so I'm just thinking, there's like a massive archive here. It's like of quotes, just like what's the best one that I could sort of utilize when I'm, you know, when things get tough. It's probably, honestly, it's probably really boring. It's like keep calm and carry on. Just like do it, you know, just like, I think, yeah, for me, that's the biggest one. It's like, just accept the way things are and just keep pushing forward. It's like, just keep going, you know, being consistent. Or it would be the one of Confucius where, you know, he who, you know, asks the question in the moment is a fool for a minute, and he who doesn't ask the question, you know, ever is a fool for a lifetime. One of those. Yeah.
Beautiful. We'll end on this one. Luca asked, when will Emerge get more power bars?
Oh, okay. He's hit me hard with that one.
No, I think the powerlifters are crying out.
I think so. I think we need more then. Yeah. We'll definitely look into getting some more then. So 100%. No, we love the powerlifting environment. It's so good. Like, it's crazy how it's just sort of just developed itself, you know, like a boiling cauldron, you know. It started from something and then it's become this huge thing. I just love seeing the environment there. It's so good. Yeah. Literally. I miss being a powerlifter, man.
Yeah, like, you always say that.
Like, I know. I see you and everyone training there. I'm just like, damn, I miss being a powerlifter. Like, just miss everyone just being like, up. Like, come on. Like, it was just such good times there. Yeah. No,
what's next for you, man?
Next for me in general? Oh, well, you know, I'll be looking at competing next year. That will be the main focus. And especially as well, I've got a few athletes as well that are competing too. So hopefully take away some victories for them. No pressure. But yeah, just pretty much expanding coaching. Looking to really just sort of push, you know, really, really hard with that sort of stuff, and just keep, you know, pushing it on with Emerge as well. Mainly, I think would be as well, just sort of learn a lot more new skills and become a better version of myself every single day, and just keep progressing with my bodybuilding, you know, competitive style, and then also as well with my coaching and just being a good person in general too. So it's always about just learning consistently every day and just trying to eventually in time, yeah, just sort of reach that goal, which I'll never reach, but it'll always continue for me to progress myself into being a better person.
Yeah, it's always good to have that gap, sort of. Otherwise, you become that obsolete individual or
100%.
stagnate. Yeah, Jaxon, it's been an absolute privilege to interview
Thank you,
you.
man.
I appreciate you for sharing your story from like upbringing, and hopefully the listeners got a bit of a different side from you. I think like I really like taking that lens of seeing like where you've come from to where you are now, because I think a lot of people would look at you now and be like, oh, he's this big, successful, amazing like bodybuilder, which you are in your own right. But I loved uncovering sort of where you've come from, and just the message about, you know, we're all human, and I guess the hardest worker in the room gets to the positions that yourself are in. So I really do appreciate your time. Where can people find you?
You can find me on social media. So I have mainly Instagram. So just Jaxon Guerin, JaxonGuerin. You can find me on there as Jaxon the Big Chungus. I'm called the Big Chungus. Yeah, also on Threads as well, which I don't know if many people use that now, but yeah, I need to get Twitter, which I don't have. But yeah, also as well, you can find me hanging around at Emerge Gym at 77 Lexton Road. 77A Lexton Road in Box Hill. You can also check out our website as well, because we do have memberships that are on there. But yeah, also too, you can find me on my Instagram of Chungus Coaching, just literally Chungus Coaching. You can find me on there as well. So all the links are in my Instagram bio.
Amazing. Be sure to check out at Life with Lamb podcast. We're posting a lot of reels there, so you'll see Jaxon there, and as well as a lot of other guests. But until next time, we'll catch you in the next episode.
Easy.